So, like, one of the biggest things that I've encountered when, talking to people is my and their cultural background. My cultural background has always played kind of a big role when talking to people, especially after I've moved schools in high school and then moving to college here. A lot of the people that I'm friends with now don't have the same cultural background as me. We come from two completely different parts. A lot of them have, had it pretty good, and they lived in a very gated community, very sheltered to a lot of the other things that's been happening. I grew up in very much poverty and in the not the best place, I guess I could say. And so that all that plays a lot when I interact with them because they don't know about that kind of stuff. So when they're talking about things that might have to do with that, then I have to be cautious and not let my emotions get the best of me when they say something that's not completely true or might be offended because they don't know any better. So I just gotta keep an account of that. Another thing that is based on your identity that affects how you interact with people is your gender. Not so much now because a lot of people are, I guess, mellowing out, and it's not so much, men and female are like separated, but it still comes into account for sure because a lot of guys are still very like strict and to the point and not like letting their emotions, or I guess, yes, letting their like angry emotions get in the way and not their sympathetic emotions get in the way of when they're talking to somebody. So they just want to get right to the point and don't really care, what your feelings are for the most part. Some guys obviously do, and then girls are more very like emotionally talking to you, like sympathetically talking to you because they don't want conflict. They don't want there to be a big argument because that's that could stress them out or whatever. And guys usually argue because that's just how they deal with things. Another thing is age. Age plays a big part in how you react with people. You're not going to talk to a 5-year-old the same way that you're going to talk to a 45-year-old. When you're talking to a 45-year-old, obviously you're going to be much more mature, respectful, really thinking about what you're saying because you don't want to come off as mature as possible, and you want them to respect you, especially if you're a younger person, because usually they're not going to, I guess, respect you as much at first because you're the younger generation and you don't know as much as them type thing. But if you're talking to a younger person, then you're kind of gonna want to like dumb it down a little bit to try when you're trying to explain them what the situation is so they can understand at the level that they're thinking at. Because if you try and talk to them like you would the 45-year-old, then they're just gonna get really confused and upset because they don't understand what you're saying. Another thing that kind of plays into it is personality traits. If I'm like an introvert and the other person is an extrovert, we're usually not gonna mesh too much together. So kind of just deciding what each other are before you interact with them, or if you're in a situation where you're out in public and you're just going to talk to a random person, kind of just like feeling out the situation and seeing how it is. I think I'm pretty good at that, reading the room. When I walk in a room, just taking a step back, looking at a majority of the people and what the group of people is and how I'm going to be interacting with people. If I'm going to a sports like a sports convention, I'm going to talk to them much more differently than I'm going to talk to like a music convention, because I'm not going to go in and talk about sports to people that are there for a music convention because they just won't care, and I won't get anywhere with them building a relationship with them, and the conversation will just be really quick and pointless and not really mean anything. Also, like, the experiences that you've gone through in life, kind of touching on like the cultural background thing again. Those play huge parts. If you've been something very tragic and or if the person that you're talking to has gone through something tragic, then you're always gonna think about that in the back of your mind and be like, all right, I know this person went through this, I'm gonna try and not try and trigger anything as much as I can if we're talking about a touchy subject, or bring up something that is of that situation that they had gone through, because then that will, have them, they'll black out, not start thinking correctly, and they'll just want to get away from the conversation because they don't feel comfortable talking about that thing. So those are the things that I think are like the most important, identities of who you are and how they affect with how you interact with people and the different people in the world. So yeah.